Hi guys, what is up? It's Kat here. Thank you for coming back and joining me for another one of our post Bad Batch chats. I'm just gonna cut right into it this week because honestly that's exactly what this episode did, and very surprisingly too. I'm going to admit I went into this episode not expecting much because the last two episodes were very eventful. I took that as a sign that perhaps after Omega was captured, they were going to maybe pump the brakes a little bit because now they had an entirely new problem to resolve other than just avoiding Crosshair now. And also, how are you going to even track down Cad Bane, who's like the #1 top bounty hunter in the galaxy? So I really assumed that we maybe even weren't going to even see Cad Bane or Omega. I thought it was going to be kind of damage control amongst the group with Hunter and the Bad Batch trying to figure out, okay, how are we going to go and retrieve her? What are we gonna do? But to be quite honest, I'm so glad that that's not the way things played out, because one, I think it makes Omega feel way less helpless, but it separates itself a little bit from the events of The Mandalorian, and the formula there of, you know, Grogu is, I would argue, a little more helpless than Omega in terms of, you know, being captured by Moff Gideon and the Dark Troopers and whatnot, and so Mando really had to go and rescue him. And so I'm glad that this show isn't following that exact same emotional kind of formula in terms of Omega getting captured and being helpless in a way and needing to rely on Hunter and the group to come and get her. We've seen, you know, time and time again how resourceful she is for her age. Very surprisingly able to somehow escape from literally Cad Bane, who it was terrifying in this episode. If I was Omega, I would literally sit down and shut my mouth and like let Cad Bane capture me because I'm just so scared of him. That's what I loved, that it wasn't, you know, us waiting for the group to go and get her. The group literally didn't do much other than track her signal. In the grand scheme of Omega's escape, she did that all on her own. But perhaps, again, that might be an important, you know, note of foreshadowing maybe, or getting our hopes up falsely in the event that if she is to actually, you know, go back to Kamino again, which, let's face it, at the rate that Lama Su is trying to get her back, I think the odds are very likely that she very well may go back to Kamino, and it will be a totally different story, and it will be a much more stressful situation now that we know Lama Su's intentions with her. And it's very much a Grogu-esque similar situation here too. His relationship to the Empire, they purely just want something from his blood, his genes, his DNA, whatever, his M count. It's a similar situation here now that we know that she has the special code, the genetic line straight from the one and only Jango Fett, and that she in a way here is a female version of Boba. That was an interesting little tidbit there, and I wonder maybe if that's an insinuation that we're gonna see him in this show, which I know has been a very debated question. I personally did not think that we were gonna see Boba in this show, mainly because I know he wants nothing to do with the clones or anything, but I assumed that he wasn't going to want anything to do with the Kaminoans or this project that they're doing or whatever. I had no expectations of seeing him in this show, but I feel like now after this episode, the odds are more likely, which honestly would be totally fine. It would be interesting to see interactions between him and Omega, but we know that he wants really nothing to do with the clones, and I think maybe he would not like the idea that there is another direct line from Jango Fett, because that potentially is a threat to him. But yes, I'm glad that we know now a little more of the full extent of what makes Omega so special, why she is so valuable to the Kaminoans, and why they want her specifically versus any of the other enhanced clone members of the Bad Batch. Interesting though, that little interaction with Fennec and Omega though, as Fennec is trying to like reason with her because she's technically safer with Fennec than in the hands of Cad Bane. As I said in my previous video, I would rather her be in Fennec Shan's hands. Even before we knew who Fennec was working for, I would have preferred Omega to just be with her than Cad Bane, literally anyone but him. But that was an interesting moment that Fennec had with her when Omega was, you know, questioning, pleading, why do the Kaminoans want me? What are they trying to do with me? And Fennec kind of, you know, looks at her and says, I think you already know. That was an interesting little tidbit there, as if Omega perhaps already knew about this experiment that the Kaminoans are doing, or maybe not that she knew of it, but was aware of it, or knew that she was a first first gen clone, considering she's able to look at another clone and recognize that they're first gen, or, you know, she was able to look at Rex and tell which generation he was. So I don't know, based on that and, you know, her interactions with Crosshair and her predictive, you know, abilities there with his chip and whatnot, it seems like she knows more than she has let up. But yes, that was also another interesting reveal. We got a lot of reveals in this episode, learning who Fennec Shand was working for. I know there had been theories out there that she was working for somebody other than the Kaminoans, and there were also theories that Cad Bane could have been working for somebody other than the Kaminoans. I know there were predictions, or even my first initial thought was that perhaps Fennec Shand was working for Crimson Dawn, but it makes more sense that it was Nalase, because how would anyone other than the Kaminoans know about Omega's existence, because she literally never left Kamino in her entire life. And it was also kind of nice because it vindicates Fennec Shand in a way. You know, this is a character that we have grown to root for. She's a boss in The Mandalorian, and I had mentioned before at the beginning of the season that it's interesting seeing her now in this new light as perhaps a villain, or, you know, the antagonist that the group has to be running from because she is after them. But we know now that she's actually working for someone who only wants, you know, the best for Omega, somebody who is looking out for Omega's safety and has good intentions. But once again, the stakes are raised now, because we know that the Kaminoans don't just want Omega back in their possession. They want her, they want to take her genes or whatever from her and then dispose of her. Totally raises the bar even more, knowing now that her life is on the line. Makes things even scarier now for the group. They really have to dodge who is going to be a very angry Cad Bane, I'm sure. It's clear now that Fennec Shand will hopefully lay off a little bit. It seems like she's going to be pumping the brakes, but in terms of Cad Bane, I do not think that this is the last that we will see of him. In terms of this bounty hunter showdown, though, I really enjoyed this episode purely to see the showdown between Fennec Shand and Cad Bane, which is something I didn't think I was even going to see. Yeah, that was not something I thought we were gonna get out of this show. Like, two of these awesome savage bounty hunters, like, going at it. It was awesome. I loved seeing the fact that Fennec Shand could hold her own against Cad Bane, but also seeing Cad Bane totally just go full rage mode on her. It was also really cool that they went to Bespin. That was cool. But what was going on there? It was very similar to Mandalorian Season 2, Episode 4, I believe, when the group goes to that Imperial facility and they see similar looking type thing, like these tanks and tubes of what looks like experimentational, almost like Avatar-like, alien-esque, strange looking, experimentational looking things. Aliens. Weird, gross things. Ew. When it literally fell on Fennec Shand, that was disgusting. But yes, it was very similar on Bespin. I think that was a very harrowing moment for Omega, and it seemed like she wasn't so much curious about it, but it almost seemed in a way like she knew what they were, what was going on, perhaps what the experiment was. I love that injected some more questions here into the plot and is feeding into this kind of theory now of what are these weird genetic cloning experimentational alien like things. Is it a snow hybrid? Is this like what is it? I want some answers. Whatever that was, I hope we find out about it, but I just hope and pray that Omega does not end up like that. I don't know. I think Omega knows more than we think she does. I feel like she has some sort of idea about what is awaiting her if she has to go back to Kamino, and to hear Hunter promise her that she will never be going back there, even though I'm sure odds are she probably will. I mean, they're totally setting that up for a moment in the future where she likely probably is going to get captured again and be brought back to Kamino, and it's gonna be this super sad moment, this broken promise now that Hunter has made that I'm sure he won't be able to keep, because they're gonna have maybe even more bounty hunters after them now. I mean, who knows? Like I said, I think Cad Bane is gonna come back with a vengeance. Lama Su might send other bounty hunters out. He might be, you know, losing his patience, and they've got Crosshair after them now. Gonna be a lot. It was good to see though that Crosshair's not out of commission. He's not totally out for the count. Like, he was actively like flying after them and chasing them in the beginning sequence there. So I hope that's a sign that his injuries aren't inhibiting during his hunt. We'll see. There's so many little storylines going on right now, which I'm glad is the case, considering where we started and where we were with just the group of the Bad Batch, now rarely flashing back and forth between the Batch and Kamino to see what was going on with Crosshair. But now we have all these little mini subplots of the Kaminoans hunting Omega, Crosshair now, Cad Bane's out there, Fennec is still lingering. Now the group really has to like kick it into high gear and think, what are we gonna do to hide from all of these people who are after us? And I just hope whatever they do, they just don't go back to SIDS. These past few episodes have been really like significantly more exciting and eventful and high stakes. I think that's just what I wanted out of this show. It's a high stakes time. You know, this show now is way more high stakes than it was when they first escaped Kamino, and so I'm happy about that, and I'm hoping that it just, you know, stays maintained going forward, because they clearly can't be laying low, which is why I hope that they, you know, don't just go back and keep doing these side missions for Sid. I'm hoping that this is the spark that lights the fire under Hunter's butt to be like, okay, we have some serious people after us, we need more help, we maybe can't just lay low, we need to be fighting back, but we need allies, we need people we know we can trust. And so I hope maybe this leads to them joining up with Rex or whatever, or just doing something, but we'll see. Even though this had a very, you know, a quick turnaround this episode in terms of the resolution, I still have high hopes for next week's episode going forward, even though we have less to theorize about, you know, less, you know, questions of angst going into next week's episode. I'm still excited going forward, and I feel like the second half of this show is really taking a turn. But yeah, I think that's everything. I might be forgetting something, but overall, like I said, I really love this episode. I love that we got a lot of answers. But yes, getting a lot of answers, but also getting a couple more questions sprinkled in, I feel like is a good formula for the show. Oh, also, rest in peace, Tonwi, I guess. Anyway, let me know your guys' thoughts down below as always. I love to hear from you guys, and I think you guys have some great predictions, honestly, whenever I read through the comments, so please feel free to share your thoughts and your predictions or theories and whatnot down below. Thank you guys, as always, so much for watching. May the Force be with you guys always, and I will see you guys again very, very soon. Bye.